Hello everyone, I'm Paromita, your host, welcoming you all to Mirpur Language Institute's weekly show 30 Minutes with MLI. In this show, we talk about foreign languages, its assessment process, how we can learn these languages effectively, and how we can be benefited by learning those languages. Today we have with us Dr. Sonia Sharmin. She has more than 17 years of English teaching experience, and currently she is working as the program manager of FIEI program in Augusta University in USA. And we also have our Mirpur Language Institute's founder and director, Mansura Mahmuda ma'am. She is also a PhD scholar at Nagaland University, India, and her research area focuses on teaching English pronunciation. Thank you, Sonia Sharmin ma'am and Mansura ma'am, to be a part of our show. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you so much.
Sonia Sharmin ma'am, you have more than 17 years of teaching experience. Can you please share these teaching experiences and your career background with our audience?
Sure, it's my pleasure. So yeah, I graduated in 2006, and then I started teaching in Bangladesh. So I was teaching in the English department at Stanford University for 2 years. And then I started teaching at East West University as a lecturer, that was promoted to a senior lecturer. In the meantime, I was thinking of coming to the US for my higher education because it was important for them, to get promoted as a professor. They wanted North American degrees. And there was this ad from the American Center for Fulbright Foreign Language Teaching Assistant. So I applied for it in 2010. And I came to the United States in 2011 on a Fulbright program, which has opened, new vistas, a new window for me, because I got to know about the teaching system here. I could compare Bangladeshi education and American education, both in the secondary education and higher education system. And definitely, after staying here for a year, I thought maybe I should come back here again because I love that place. It was University of Georgia, Athens, and Athens is a wonderful college town. There are students from all over the world, more than 200 ethnicities are there. So it's a very welcoming town for internationals. So I thought I should come back here. So I went back home. Started working at East West again as a senior lecturer, and I came back for my PhD in 2013. I was teaching undergraduate students, American, they were pre-service teachers, and I was also teaching international graduate students, and I was teaching pronunciation to them. They were mostly from China, India, Korea, Iran, and other countries where English is used as a second language, but they were doing their PhDs in, mostly in hard sciences, life sciences, business, and other disciplines. Meanwhile, for my PhD, what I was focusing on was finding how second language writing happens, especially being a minority in the US. I was trying to focus on a minority here. Although, of course, African Americans are minority here, Hispanics are, but I thought I should choose somebody that are close to my country. So I found this Burmese population because Burma and Bangladesh, we share a border, although we're not that close, but we still have a border. So I chose them. They were refugees from Burma, and I wanted to focus on their literacy practices. I focused on how they learn and how they compete and how they assimilate with their American peers, because it's important to know that they're being second language learners. Their parents do not speak English all the time. Whereas when they're coming to school, they're exposed to the American culture, they're exposed to their American peers who speak English fluently. So my research was to observe, like, how do they learn, how do they perform, and how do they write, and what are some of the social media and online platforms that they are engaged in, so that they can go to college, especially. And I'm very happy to know that some of them are attending colleges here. Some of them have struggles because they also have to take care of their family members, because some of them, they're missing their family or one parent, like they're living in single parent household. So sometimes they have to take care of their own siblings. Still, they struggle because they have seen, like being refugees, they have seen what struggle is. And that was my focus. And I, in a way, coming from a post-colonial background, I could identify myself with them. Although, we are not refugees, we are international students. We have our challenges in a country like US when we come here as internationals. So after that, after I finished my PhD in 2018, I came back to Bangladesh. I worked as an assistant professor at East West again. Finally, when my immigration status was fulfilled, I came back to US and I worked at the writing center here as a tutor. I worked with the student teachers. I was also teaching students who were doing their masters in teaching. And also currently I'm teaching as an adjunct faculty. My focus is mainly English composition, rhetoric and composition, and how we can use literature in our classroom. And that's why I thought, graphic novels is, one of the compelling medium that can be used in classroom teaching, especially for second language learners, but not to say that it's only for them, because I have seen students who are native English speakers, but they are into graphic novels, especially what is happening in the world, like all the social media that they're exposed to. They're always on the phone. And it's important that we as teachers do not confine them just on text-heavy books, but expose them with something that they are familiar with. One of them is graphic novels. Korean soap operas, they love it. My nieces in Bangladesh, they love Korean soap operas, and they love some language in Korean too. So that's it. That's a little bit about my teaching experience.
Wonderful. So, ma'am, our today's topic is teaching English using graphic novels. But I somehow feel that maybe many of us still don't know what this graphic novel is all about. What it is.
Sure. Yeah, I know. This is still new. I just published, an art chapter. It's an article. It was published from Springer. It is published from Bangladeshi writers. Rubina Khan from Dhaka University. They published something. They compiled a collection, and so graphic novels. This is a graphic novel. This is, of course, in the American context. This is about African American soldiers who fought in the First World War, but they were never recognized, because we know, if we look at the history, they were never recognized as citizens. They were always treated because of slavery. So this novel tells us like how, even though they fought in the First World War as Americans, they were already treated as like marginalized citizen in their own country. But then they fought for their country, for America, when they were in Germany. So that has, this book has many compelling pictures, like something just reading, anybody like who hates reading, they will not be interested in that. But when you see the pictures, then you can see like what suffering they went through, what this country was going through, what the whole world was going through. People were slaughtered, and all those things were happening. This is one of them. And here is another one. This is written by an immigrant from Argentina. She wrote her experience coming as an immigrant to the US. And she came in the 1960s when there was this civil rights movement going on. So she saw the clash between black and white, and being a brown woman from Argentina, she was caught in between, like, what is going on? So it's all about, it's dark room where we, do when, like, especially in previous times when there were negatives and people used to, camera with those negatives, they used to focus on the photos. So there are some things like we can easily interpret, or we can easily connect to with our experiences. Like she talked about, graveyard. She talked about her experience being in a dark room because that's where his father used to work. And where her father worked, she saw different images, like how in the magazine at that time, there was always representation of Hollywood heroines who were, who had blonde hair, blue eyes, white skin, and that was the focus. So compared to that, she being a brown woman will not be considered as beautiful as that kind of so-called beauty in that world, in that culture. So it's all about deconstructing that, that background, that culture, and how, other identities are also important. I'm talking about this because we live in a multicultural, multinational world, even in Bangladesh, like where this is a post-colonial country. So if we think of history of our liberation war, for example, so instead of just giving them history in a text, I'm sure our illustrator can, our illustrator and write. Sometimes a writer can be an illustrator, but I have seen illustrator, they are writing stories of like classical stories in the graphic form. Another one is Anna Frank. It's kind of related to this present world, especially that clash, the war that we are going through. Is we all know Anna Frank, like she was the one who was killed by Hitler. And it tells the history of the Second World War and how, because of the rise of Nazi, there was anti-Semitic attitude and people were killed. So I have seen practically my students giving them two same book. One is the real text, the Diary of Anne Frank. Another one was the graphic novel form. So definitely, teenagers will love the one that has more pictures, more appeal, more emotions. Like we are focusing on characterization and plot. So sometimes it's difficult for learners, especially those who are not English majors or those who are just, like in the high school, like what is theme, what is plot, what is characterization. But when they see a face, like a sad face or someone full of emotion, angry face, they can easily interpret that character. Like this character is angry, this character is sad, she's crying, instead of just reading words that might be unknown to them. Sometimes there are words like we see in Marvel comics, like Thor and all the Marvel comics we have from Hollywood. We can have our stories like Tata Chaudhary, Tintin. They're also they were at one time in the 80s, 90s. I have seen people reading them, but that was considered as a very like a lowbrow art. Like who reads a comic? Who reads someone who is not interested in reading a real book will read that. At that time, comics have that. Even in the US, that was considered as a lowbrow art. Who reads that? Somebody who cannot read will read that. But things have changed. Media has changed. Digital literacy is there. So many things have changed. We are living in the age of multimodality, where text is not the only way to communicate.
Sonia,
yes.
Do you remember the character Tokai?
Yes, Tokai, Ronobi. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's comic, right?
Yes, that's exactly. That was the comic from Ronobi. So if we combine that strips, that will be a comic book. That will be a graphic novel format.
Yes.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. We can do that. We can even do it like Sheikh Mujib's, life story, like how instead of just telling the history just in text, how all those things happen, like who was he, and then how he became the father of the nation, how everything happened, how he was assassinated. Those pictures will create more appeals, like because these are still pictures. I'm glad you brought about like Tokai. We all love Tokai. He's famous. The way he's portrayed.
Childhood.
Mm-hmm. We know like how he looks because he's a Tokai. Of course, he was not wearing dresses. He was just bare body, just wearing like a shorts and carrying a huge sack on his back because he's a Tokai. So the children will be interested more in that, just like instead of like text heavy, especially foreign languages. But that being said, I'm not saying that do not introduce text or we just should follow this. It's our responsibilities to get to know our students, where they are, who has which potential, differentiate and accommodate who needs. Somebody might be a voracious reader, so he or she might need more, like bring more graphic novels. What is it that you like to read? Somebody might be a reluctant reader, and for them it would be easy to give them just one page of pictures and ask them, like, write something about it. What do you see in the picture? What do you see in each panel? Write it in a very simple language and let us know. Illustrate that in 5 sentences. So we can always differentiate based on what our students need. And as teachers, it's difficult, especially in a classroom in Bangladesh. It's difficult, 40 minutes time or 45 minutes, and you have more than 100 students. It is difficult, but like within that difficulty, we have to do something so that our future generation, our students in the future, they get to learn and they are up to date with what is happening in the world. Because our purpose is to make our students, global citizens, because we live in a global world, not just to confine in the very traditional text-heavy books. Sorry, I talked a lot. I mean, you asked me one thing, but I was like bringing all about what graphic novel is.
I have one question, that is, in traditional text, we are not presented with pictures. So what we do is we read, and then in back of our mind we sort of create some characters, and we sort of imagine all the situations. So it improves our imagination skills. But in graphic novels, everything is presented. We don't need to think much. We can just relate to those pictures. So how it is improving our imagination skills?
Yeah, so visual cues, they have powerful ways of attracting us, especially learners, young learners. Why do you think when we see things like what is happening in Israel and Palestine affect us so much? Because there's this graphic picture, like the suffering. Any party who will want to manipulate you, like support Israel, so they will show pictures of how Israelis are suffering. Someone who is supporting Palestine, they'll show this is how Palestinians are suffering, because that has an appeal. So similarly, when there is this, pictures tell a lot of stories. And as you know, that we do not consider just words as communication. Communication happens through different ways. Pictures, videos, sometimes podcasting, that's part of communication too. So it induces different emotions, and it might not happen for everybody. Again, it's not for like, it's not generalization, like graphic novel will be helpful for everybody, just like anything else. We cannot treat everybody in one medicine, since things like that. But majority, especially reluctant learners, or maybe a voracious learner, or maybe somebody who has less interest or afraid of reading, oh my God, this book is this 700 words, I cannot read that 700 pages. But if it is just pictures, then at least that person will be comfortable, like, oh, it's a picture and I see there are stories, this is happening, and then on the next page something else is happening. So that's the good side of reading a graphic novel, and encouraging our students to be engaged learners instead of being afraid of learning something new.
So as you're talking about engagement, so how do graphic novel engage differently than traditional texts?
Yeah, that's a critical question, and that's a good question too. Again, it depends, but I would say, like teachers, we can make panels. Like we take a panel from here. I mark the book. For example, if you see this, like a panel of these 3 houses. So if it was described in a text, it would be something like, especially reluctant learners, or even somebody who is not interested in reading in English, that person might not be happy, reading that. But if we present them with pictures, and it doesn't have to be picture from the book, it can be asking them, bring your family pictures, make your own graphic novel. Why don't you bring your family album? We all have our family album. Or if not out, somebody say, oh, we don't have any album, I live by myself, my parents are away. What pictures you have on your on your cell phone? Go find pictures on your cell phone and create stories. Do you think there's a story? What happened yesterday? What pictures did you take? Can you write a story about that? That helps. And people will always have stories to tell, and some will not be willing to tell it orally because people may be shy, people may be reluctant, they may not want to share it with everybody, just with their friends, not with the teacher. So some students will love to write it in a graphic novel format than to just present it in an oral presentation. And again, we just have to always find out what works best for my class. If they do not like this way, is there anything else that I can write? And of course, selecting graphic novels. Am I selecting it appropriately? Like choosing this one may not be a good one for our students in Bangladesh because they don't have any background about this. They don't know the history. Once they know the history of the Second World War, it will be easy for us to present Anne Frank's diary in graphic format. But I know our students will know about Mukti Juddha, Liberation War. Our students will know about things like even like Rana Plaza, when it, just the rubbles were there, it fell on the ground. So anything like that, or flood, or anything happy, like our happy memories. We have so many things like Pohela Boishak, the celebration Eid, Durga Puja that we are celebrating right now. So anything like that, anything about that, in that background. Like I was checking on some novels today in Bangladesh. So I found some of the novels by Humayun Ahmed and his brother Muhammad Jafar Iqbal, their novels in graphic format. I remember as a child, we loved the story by Jafar Iqbal. It was called Tukunjil. It is about, like an extraterrestrial character like this size. But children love to imagine about who he is, where he's coming from, which is a little bit like E.T. in Hollywood, extraterrestrial, but written in the context. Anything that is written in our context, familiarity always helps. If we want to introduce something that is written in the American context, we always have to give them the idea, like, what is it? Otherwise, they'll be bored because they do not know what it is. Similarly, it's here. If they do not know what, like Eid is, most American will be, what is Eid? We do not know what that is. We just have to tell them, like, this is what the biggest celebration in the world of Muslims celebrate it. Then they might be interested because then they know the context. So, choosing something, Chacha Chaudhuri, and I would definitely, as an educator, my vision will be like, we should support more illustrators and writers, to collaborate and write, if not writing a new one, taking a very classical version of something. It can be Tagore's, it can be Humayun Ahmed's, it can be Jafar Iqbal or anybody who is famous, and then taking and writing it in the present context. There's always this hybrid forms. What is written? How can our students that are born 10 years ago, they can identify themselves? Because they may not know the history of anything else before that, except for the Liberation War. We always have to connect the context. This is how it is. And that's why it is important to teach history. And history can be taught easily through graphic novels using the visuals. Like, this is what really happened when people died or when people rebelled. And that's when I got our independence. So these are some of the ideas that I can think of right now. But I'll be happy to, give you more, detailed ideas later on in writing format.
That will be great. Ma'am, are there any common misconceptions or criticism about using graphic novels in education that you would like to discuss?
Yes. I have mentioned that before a little bit, like graphic novels in the whole world, there was a time it was considered a lowbrow art. Like, scholars, they'll be like, oh, who reads a graphic novel? like someone who cannot read will read a graphic novel. But things have changed a lot. We talk about disability studies. We talk about different rights. People who are on the autism spectrum. We have variety of needs, not just in the US, not just in the Western countries, even in our country. There are students who have so many anxiety problems, and that is real. Not that it was not in our time. It was, of course, in our time, but nobody diagnosed it. People didn't care for our mental health the way we care for it now. Still, it's taboo in some part of our country or in the world. But things have changed. Now we know our students better. Now we know, because even 20 years ago, there was no cell phone. We didn't know what Facebook is. We didn't know what Instagram is, or what, Snapchat is, or Twitter is. But all the students, both here and there, all over the world, they all have some kind of account, and they communicate through that. So if their needs have changed, it's important to get out of all those, criticism that we have, that like students who do not want to study at home, they will read a novel in the classroom. That's the kind of misconception that we have. We have to get out of those traditional mindset and things that some people may think that, okay, it's not lowbrow art, but I don't think this is really helpful for students. That's not true, because research has found that this really is helpful, especially for second language learners, because this gives us, in a way, like hands-on activities, like when we touch something, it's easy for us. They can read, they can draw pictures, they can bring their own experiences, they can write their own journey of life. They can write anything of their family stories, their own stories with their friends. So all these senses are involved rather than just reading. So your hands, your eyes, you're listening. Sometimes you hear character, boom, somebody attacking somebody, that word is given, or crack, something has cracked something. And that happens especially when you watch a Hollywood movie. You'll see like the subtitles, especially things of like Marvel comics, they always will have those kind of words, something like a bomb blast, something happened. Those things that appeal our different senses, not just our reading, but our sensory images are all connected. Hearing, listening, seeing something, and touching. Very important for us to, just to see.
We don't have that much time, Miss Sonia. This is a very new topic for me. I will ask you a question, not related to this topic, that you have taught in Bangladesh for a long time, and now you are teaching there. Okay. Now, just share your feelings about teaching here and there. I mean, the difference between teaching Bangladeshi students and the teaching US students.
It's very different.
And they are native speakers, right?
Yeah.
So what is the difference you find?
How
do you feel about it?
Yes. So it varies. I would say just because they're native speakers, I mean, that's something we think, but just because they're native speakers doesn't mean that they're good readers and good writers. Honestly, that's my observation. In fact, teaching, especially if you go to a school, you will find students from different backgrounds. There are Hispanic population, people from all over the world, because their parents may be from Africa or Korea. So they're there and they do not speak English at home. So it varies from background to background. Someone who is coming from a very well-off family background, even if they're speaking in a different language, because their parents are, educated, highly educated, focused on education, they will have a complete different experience than somebody who is a native speaker, but the socioeconomic background is not very good. parents do not stay home because they're busy working outside. They do not get that care from home. So sometimes they're reading, like my sixth graders, once I taught sixth graders, their reading skill, like shockingly, you'll think that, oh, they're native speakers, they can read anything. No, their reading skills were either like a kindergartner or like a first grader, second grader, third grader, and that was majority, more than 85%. And unfortunately, they were from the minority communities here. So that's one picture. And again, I'm not generalizing. There are private schools, there are schools where it varies from district to district. You might find, students whose reading score will be on the 90th percentile. But that's one thing. Another thing is in Bangladesh, we teach students, of course, we have different religions, but race-wise is almost kind of monolithic. We all are Bengalis, mostly. Of course, there are our friends from different areas of the country, but there are not a lot of them we see. I hope there'll be more, but mostly it's people who look like us, like brown skin and speaks in Bengali. So the challenge is a little different than
educational background is also same.
Exactly. Middle class mostly. So especially those who come for higher education, middle class people like us, mostly similar religion, similar background. So it's easy in a way to address their needs, because we all need English to get a job, BCS or preparing for IELTS or TOEFL or GRE. So we know what we need. Here, it depends from whether it's a school, whether it's a higher education class. Because if it is a school, you'll see lots of students from all over the world, Hispanics from South America, lower socioeconomic status, because public school is free in this country. But higher education, it's something you will need the motivation first. You will need money. So only some people may have money, but they're not interested. I'm not for college. They will say that. But somebody who can afford, when they go to college, things are really different. They're more serious. And it can be enjoyable too. There are good things. Is my observation was for different words, I always have to interpret that or give them the meaning in Bangladesh. Whereas here, there are things that they will know that I, as a teacher, may not know that, what is the meaning of that particular phrase. I have to get to know that ahead of time, so that in case they ask me, I'm prepared to say things, because they know that I'm not from this culture. So what if there's a student who just wants to see, you do not even speak English as a first language, but you are teaching us English? Because there are things, and there are students who will be very respectful to me. They'll be like, oh, thank you for bringing your experience to us, and it was very nice, talking to you and being in your class. So it varies. We just cannot say this is how it is. It also varies from higher education areas, counties, universities. But in general, I would say it's easy. Once you are in a university, we need to be prepared. And there are some resistance if the topic is a little bit controversial, because we carry our cultural identities. So we just always cannot focus on things that people here are not familiar with. For example, the war issues. We have one mindset, that they may have complete different version of the story. And I respect that too, because they don't know our version of the story. Similarly, we don't know their version of the story. So all you need to do is to be as a teacher, I always try to find out different avenues, what is it that I'm missing? Because we have a single story, but what is the other part? What are they saying? Can I find something? And it's better to learn, to be a well-rounded reader than just a biased one, because we all are opinionated, somehow influenced by something. That's it, Mummy.
Are the students there conscious about the word there?
It all depends. There are some, but I don't think many will care. It all depends again. The students, I'm sure they're conscious, because there are, different organizations like Muslim Student Association, Jewish Students Organization. They are, in a way, raising their voice. And it's kind of sad to see, because you will see two parties, like Muslim students, they are sad, Jewish students, they are sad, because both parties have their own stories. Like, this is happening, we don't like this, stop killing. The goal is, of course, stop genocide. Like, we do not support killing of innocent people. But things are happening. I mean, they are not completely aware of the picture, not all of them, but those who are into like multicultural student engagement, they're a little worried. And it's a very sensitive issue because it might offend anybody who has different belief. Unlike, something in my country, because people will mostly believe in the same way, like less support for Palestine. Here it's not that easy to say that.
Okay, thank you for sharing your feelings. Paromita.
Yes, we are at the very end of our program, and I don't want to say bye, but I had so many questions in my mind. But maybe later on some other day we'll sit again and we'll discuss all these matter in more in detail. So today I have to say you bye to you all now, and thank you for managing some time from your busy schedule. Thank you for joining with us. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Paromita and Mansura. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.